want to sing some sea shanties to get us going? That'd be nice.
No, that magic can't be contrived.
Oh.
You walked into that a minute ago.
Spontaneous, huh?
Yeah.
Right.
I was doing that because you were out of the room. You got lucky catching that last stanza.
Well, I got plenty of it the other night, so thank you for that.
You're welcome. I'm here to help. All right, Andy Pope. It only took us 3 years.
Man, 3 whole years, Steve. But welcome to Kentucky, brother.
Yeah. Every time I come here, I get blown away all over again. Not just because I get to see you, because like you try to kill me with hospitality every time I come in here, but also just there's always something cool to see. Because like right now, there's no video portion to this, so no one's going to see it. But we are sitting in a new project of yours, hence the Echo, with probably the most incredible view in Bardstown. To my right, your left.
Some would say all of Kentucky.
I haven't seen a lot of Kentucky, but I'm inclined to agree.
It's a gorgeous view.
Yeah.
We are currently sitting in our new private event space, which we're in the process of designing right now.
By we, you are at...
What do you mean by we, Steve?
Willett Distillery.
Oh, is that where we are? Okay.
That's what you told me when we walked in. I don't read so good, but that's what you told me.
I know. It hurts my head. Yes. So we're recording this at the Willett Distillery, which is what brought me to Kentucky from Washington, D.C. I've been here now for about 2.5 years, and I've loved every second of it. Working alongside Drew Colesbean and the Colesbean family has been a dream of mine since I got in the whiskey world, and to see that come to fruition and to be able to come here, work for them, run their bar and restaurant, it's been a dream come true. And now we are in the process of designing a new private event space that is going to be something very special.
Yeah, the walkthrough you gave me yesterday it's so exciting. And like I came in here and did some before photos for you, and I'm really looking forward to coming for the afters because everything you described to me that's going to happen is so cool. Yeah. So exciting.
I'm really fortunate to have the team that I have here. I mean, John Sleesman, our executive chef, is a force to be reckoned with in the culinary world. And, his talent in the kitchen is rivaled only by his due diligence outside of that. So he's designing the kitchen downstairs. This is a 2-story project. The upper floor will have, a bar that'll be enclosed in all glass so that you can see the view, which unfortunately your listeners can't see right now, but it is spectacular. We're looking out over the Rick Houses of Heaven Hill across the street, another legendary distillery, and it is just, stunning. And to be able to open a private event space that'll cater to, mostly we're going to try to cater more towards events with the KBD, the Kentucky Bourbon organization that sort of is our de facto tourism board here in Kentucky. They run the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, and so that's usually what drives tourism in Kentucky these days. And we're going to do events with them. We're going to do corporate events, private events, tastings. It's going to be something special. I'm so excited for this project. And we're still in the planning phases right now, but the structure is here, and we're going to start construction soon and hopefully have it done by this fall. That's the goal.
And everything you do, you guys plan it out. Like what you've told me about you and management and how you coordinate on things, and then how that trickles down operationally to how you run the restaurant and the bar program. I have no doubt in my mind that unless a comet hits, this place is going to be rocking and rolling by November. Because, and that's one of the things that impresses me so much is that, in my personal life and in the work that I do, the idea of efficiency has been very much on my mind. And every time I come here, I'm just blown away by the efficiency you have created in your space, which is amazing because you and I know that you can be a force of chaos sometimes.
Oh, that's very accurate. Absolutely.
But when you belt up and go to work, it is like your focus and that of the entire team you work with is freaking incredible.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I have a great team.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done this without Jeff Knott, who I'm sure some of your listeners are familiar with.
He was number, I think, podcast 6 or 7 actually.
Yeah.
Back when he was in the hometown.
Oh, believe me, it hurt me a little bit that he got on the podcast before I did.
Okay, to quote Sean Connery in The Last Crusade, you left just when you were becoming interesting. I wanted you on there, but you left. You skedaddled.
Well,
you were not in the city.
Hey, I had to spread my wings, all right?
Well, you did. And
I'm a peacock. You got to let me fly, Steve. Okay? Okay.
Peacocks don't really fly, dude.
I don't know. I see them clear a fence every once in a while. But no,
glorified jumping. Come on.
Yeah. I just got pulled to DC right when you got this going. So I'm really happy we're finally sitting down and doing this. And it's surreal that it's happening in this brand new private event space that we're going to get going.
I think it's only appropriate.
Perfect. Yeah.
It's only appropriate because, like, anyone who, like, follows me on Instagram knows what you look like, whether they know who you are or not, because I'm bragging on you and your projects all the time. But, I'm less interested in you as a representative of Willett Distillery, and full disclaimer, all opinions expressed are those of the parties involved, not the organizations they work for. But nice. You and I have been through so much good and bad together, and it's one of those things that, not to get too sappy too early, because we've both been crying a little bit since I got here as we talk about things.
Might still be crying.
But I'm so happy that we've been able to encourage each other over the last few years. All the ups and downs, my business, your business, the jobs you've taken, it's been really cool. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we're both still upright and doing things right now is
kind of shocking.
It's amazing. I mean, and I think it's a testament that if we can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. But no, back to what I was saying, when you were speaking to efficiency and, your affinity for it, that's how a good bar and restaurant operates. The more efficient you are, the better, all of your systems operate, the more relaxed your staff can be. And I'm just so fortunate to have the team that I have. Because if I didn't have John, Trey, Jeff, the rest of my team in the front of the house and back of the house, if they didn't do all the little things, it would create chaos. And instead, we have controlled chaos, which is usually a little more my speed. Yeah. But they're incredible. I've been blown away by our chef team since I've been here. I didn't know them at all when I moved here, so that was a leap of faith. But I had faith in Drew and the Colesbean family to find good people, and they put together a really solid team. And they gave us a lot of leeway. They allowed me to bring up whoever I wanted to be my right-hand man. And, Jeff Knott, man. I can't say enough good things about Jeff.
Yeah.
Having someone of his caliber, his expertise, his experience.
And just a good human.
Witty, dry dad humor is, it's everything. And
Jeff and I went running this morning. 6:55 a.m. The dad jokes were already coming in hot.
Oh yeah, they don't stop at this point, man. That's just how his brain operates.
Yeah.
But having him here, and then like I said, man, John and Trey, they are some serious heavy hitters in the culinary world. Whether people realize it or not, what they do in the kitchen, is as good as any kitchen I've ever seen in my life. And to have them on board and part of the team, it's incredible. And so I just. It's surreal a lot of the time. Getting to work alongside such consummate professionals makes my job really pretty easy. And it allows me to relax and, just watch them work, and then walk around, shake some hands, shake some drinks, and not shake any babies, because I don't think you're supposed to do that.
And I was talking to Trey earlier before we came down here to get started. I've photographed a lot of professional kitchens in the last few years, and the one here is still my favorite, because everything you're talking about, the layout of the space, the lighting in the space, and the way there's been like zero turnover in the kitchen for the last however long. Mm-hmm. The guys work really well together. Mm-hmm. So when I'm floating, doing my thing with the camera, that one trick I'm good at, it's like watching a dance, and it's mesmerizing. Just no one's rushing, no one's stressed. They're speaking very calmly, and it's just plate, expo, clean the surface, start again. Right. It is just pure flow. Yep. And it's so much fun to watch. And that's the same way you and Jeff moved behind the bar, because you made sure your bar was laid out the way it needs to be. You have all your products, fresh juices, all your mixers, all your spirits, and it's just, you're barely thinking about it. It's just pure muscle memory, and your recipes are always on point, so the drinks are consistent. Every glass comes out just coated with condensation because it's just the right temperature. Mm-hmm. It's just cool. It's just cool to see.
Those are tricks to the trade I picked up mostly from Ben Long in DC. And
let's back it up a little bit, even past DC a little bit.
All right.
Because when we first met, you were at an inflection point in your life, or just past an inflection point, where you had just sorted some stuff out, and you were revving up, and people were starting to realize that you were a force to be reckoned with. Because when you decide to be good at something, you don't mess around. And I'm going to say that, it's fun watching you blush right now, but like, it's the truth. When you decide you're going to do something, you don't mess around. You're going to own it. And around the time you and I met was when you started rocking out these cocktail competitions and just stacking up accolades, local, state, beyond state. I can't even keep it straight anymore. But like, when did that start with you? Because there's a purity with which you approach it that, I say this about you and I say this about me. We both could have done other things. We both, my family wanted me to go to law school. For a while, you thought you were going to law school. And we kind of chose to live in this kind of underground economy of the work that we do in our industries. But then you took it beyond that. So, I mean, you've told me before, but refresh me and just tell people who you are and how you live, because I think it's super cool.
Okay. All right. So, my early 20s, I dropped out of college, went back to college, dropped out of college again, went through the paralegal program for a while, still thought I was going to law school, fooling myself, was making money on the side playing poker a lot, but I've always been drawn to the underbelly of society. That is, I've always found it fascinating how there's a subset of our economy that exists, off the books, tax-free, and I was doing a lot of odd jobs. Like I said, playing poker was the primary source of my income for a while I was trying to figure out my path in life. And I wound up getting a job as a server and realized pretty quickly that, serving is a skill. It's often like diminished, but a good server is as valuable to any establishment as anyone else that's working in that place. Some people call them order monkeys or, something like that, which I always think is really derogatory of that skill. I mean, there are legitimate professional servers. It's a real thing.
Oh, yeah.
But, when I saw what our beverage team was doing behind the bar, the restaurant where I was working, I thought, that looks like an actual skill. Maybe I should learn a skill. Maybe that'll, maybe I'll like it, maybe I won't, who knows? And so it took a lot of convincing because I didn't have any experience. But a year later, I was the bar manager there. And I have a lot of fond memories working behind that bar back in my hometown in Pensacola. And as you progress through any sort of trade, you start to pick little things up here and there from people that you're either working with or were other professionals that are in the industry. And what I used to do was go and sit in front of a gentleman's well. His name's Pat Bolster, who you know very well.
Oh, yeah.
And some of your listeners, I'm sure, know as well. Who was really one of the first craft bartenders in Pensacola and was responsible for bringing, this sense of craft, precision, and dedication to a craft to Pensacola that, was to a trade that was kind of transient. And at the time, I really just enjoyed being on the fringe of society, and bartending sort of let me do that. Most of your income's not reported, and you can kind of live a little more freely. And so I was more gravitating to the trade because of that. And then as I got more and more into it, and it had a lot to do with, sitting in front of Pat's well and listening to how passionate he was about not just like making the drinks. I mean, the drinks they're just drinks, they are a social lubricant. That's all they are.
Yeah.
Really.
Excuse me.
And what I noticed about Pat is what he did very, very well was create an atmosphere where people could let their guard down. They could relax. And that is what really made me fall in love with bartending.
Yeah.
Because bars, I'm going to delve into a little bit of history real quick, but bars have played an integral part in American history and human history throughout our existence. It's one of the few places where people can gather from, whether you work for the railroad or you're a doctor, people will go to their neighborhood tavern and they'll have a couple of drinks, relax a little bit in a non-professional environment and interact with one another. And it's one of the few places that happens. And that's why our country essentially was founded in taverns. That's, where a lot of the greatest ideas for democracy came from, were in taverns. So once I started to realize that, this wasn't some nefarious, weird little culture, that these places serve a really, really important part of small local communities, I realize how important bartending as a trade is. And one of my favorite things to tell people is that the year Prohibition was passed, 19 out of the 20 aldermen in New York City were all bartenders. They're some of the most trusted people in a community. I mean, some people will call us armchair therapists or, bars are where you go on the best day of your life. You have your firstborn. It's the greatest moment in your life, and you want to go celebrate at your local tavern with your friends. And it's also the place you go on the worst day of your life. Your wife left you. She took everything. You've got nothing left. Where do you go? Your local tavern to see your favorite bartender.
Have you read Ray Ollenberg's book, The Great Good Place?
No, I haven't, but I know what you're referring to.
Yeah. I mean, he taught at UWF, where we both went to school, and I read it during college, and it's beyond time for me to refresh on it, but he talks a lot about exactly what you're saying, and how a lot of that was, the United States began as a nation of immigrants, and coming in from Europe, especially, Italians, Germans, the French, they bring in their traditions of cafes, coffee shops, and beer gardens, and how so much of the early social fabric of America was built around that. Everything you're saying, and it was part of what made us a melting pot, and then led to cohesion. And as cities become more fractured and less walkable, that cohesion is going away, which I find super interesting. It's super tangential. I won't go down that rabbit hole, but it's like there's been entire books written on this, and people still lose sight of it, which blows me away, because it's in our daily experience. We just don't think about it. Right.
And unfortunately, I mean, it was vilified for a long time in this country, and that started with Prohibition and the temperance movement. And the entire trade disappeared, and we've only really started to recover within the last 25, at most 30 years, where we actually have a foundation of bartenders that know enough to be able to teach the next generation. And because this is an entirely apprenticeship trade, it just disappeared entirely. I mean, during Prohibition, if you wanted to continue working in bars and restaurants, I mean, you had to go to Europe or do it in the underground, like where we went the other day, the Rothskeller.
Yeah.
And those are the only places where you're going to find work. And so the only places where this survived were mob-controlled cities, New York, Chicago, New Orleans. And unfortunately, because of the temperance movement, because of Prohibition, the entire trade went from being one of the most respected trades in a small community to one of the most vilified. And then, because of the lack of knowledge for decades and decades, you had subpar drinks being made. You had mostly transient bartenders that would do it for a little while and then, get a real job, quote unquote,
Yeah.
And it, until relatively recently, wasn't seen as a respectable trade. And in a lot of places still isn't. But I respect the hell out of anyone that works behind a bar or as a server or in the service industry. I mean, you are there to be of service to your fellow human. And I can think of no better way to spend every single day of your life than serving your local community, your friends, your neighbors, and being of service to them. I think it's often looked at as, like, oh, they just like to party. And, yes, there is that side of it for sure. But really what we're doing is being of service to our fellow human. And
you also can't make that distinction, because who else likes to party after working hard? Everyone else.
Yeah.
Like, who are bartenders serving in our hometown most of the time? Attorneys who just won a case. They've done their job.
Absolutely.
And they come in, they order expensive drinks, they get really loud, they get crazy, they Uber home. Same as everybody else.
Absolutely.
And it is such a false distinction.
Absolutely.
That people try to make, that bartenders or creative types, like I get lumped into, and I'm not an artist, I'm a technician, but I get lumped in with that. And it's like, no, we're not just like licking frogs, doing mushrooms, and making art all the time. It's like we are working hard, and if you see us playing hard, it's because we earned it.
100%. Absolutely. And I mean, it's not an easy job. I mean, you work 6-8 hours behind a busy bar, like it'll kick your ass. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
I have all the respect in the world. I don't care if you work at a dive bar or, a high-end cocktail bar in New York. It really doesn't matter. I mean, sure, are the ingredients different? Are the cocktails different? Is the beer list the same, the wine list, whatever? But that's just, like I said, the social lubricant, you know, and I do take a lot of pride in the drinks that I make. And that's because I don't really see why you can't have both, why you can't have expertly made cocktails in a relaxed environment and still give the same level of, you know, relaxed service that you get at a local dive bar, which is why people love dive bars so much. And I do as well, because it's just, you can take a breath and like, you don't feel like you have to get buttoned up and, you know, put on airs just to walk into the place.
Right.
You can just relax and be yourself. But I've never understood why the two couldn't exist at the exact same time, why you can't have expertly made cocktails, a great wine list, a great beer list, and then do that with a bartender just wearing a t-shirt and who's there just to be your friend.
So on that note, let's talk about, you've had a few training grounds, you know, Jocko's, Old Hickory, but then you met some really interesting people in DC when you worked at Reliable Tavern.
I did. And that was, on paper, a step back. Because, you know, I was running Old Hickory and, like you said, you know, winning these cocktail competitions and stuff, which we can talk about that later, but like they're not nearly as glamorous as a lot of people like to make them out to be. I mean, I was honored, to represent Old Hickory and, do those competitions. And there's a huge part of me that loves that. I love the spotlight. I love getting out and you know, showing what I can do. Yeah, I mean,
you're definitely like, I definitely don't have a million photos of you hanging off of library ladders giving speeches. You're a shrinking violet.
Oh, I know. I'm well aware. But no, I originally went to DC to work at a bar that had won Best Bar in America, and I was promised a job there. And I had taken about a month to go to Europe, and when I came back from Europe, they had won Best Bar in America, and so they had applications from all over the world of, you know, heavy hitter bartenders with, you know, big names, you know, for lack of a better term, they were just, you know, these, you know, really popular bartenders, and my spot was given away. I was at a pretty low point at that part of my life, really just because I moved up there with the promise of this job. Signed a lease on a pretty expensive little 500 square foot studio apartment, which is insanely expensive. And with, you know, the promise of working at this world-class bar. And in my mind at the time, you know, that was the pinnacle of what I wanted to do. And, you know, I'm sowing my sorrows one night at this bar called Bourbon, which is a little area called Adams Morgan. It was Bill Thomas's original bar. Okay. So I knew that much. I was still new and fresh to DC, and the guy working there, you know, we got to talking about vermouth. Actually, we just we just talked about vermouth for, you know, 3-4 hours, and
like you do. I mean, to me, that sounds totally normal for you to do on a Tuesday night.
Yeah, his name's Patrick. He's a great guy. And, you know, he said, and I got a friend who just opened up a restaurant called the Shaw Bijou, which folded pretty quickly. I think it was like 6 months, under a year.
Ouch.
Yeah, it just didn't last very long. And he was like, you should probably go talk to my friend Ben. You know, he bartended in New York for a little bit. And, you know, he's recruiting some people right now to open up this place called Reliable Tavern. And at that point, I just needed a job. So, I was like, absolutely, I'm in. You know, if it gets me back behind a bar, it really doesn't matter where at that point. I mean, I was about to start turning tricks on the street like, at that point.
And how many years had you spent like seriously bartending at this point?
About 5.
Okay.
And so Ben did this thing every Thursday where he called it Bartender Training, but it was open to chefs, it was open to sommeliers, it was open to anyone in the industry, cicerones. If you were even remotely interested in spirits and hospitality, it was free, noon, every Thursday. Come in, we're going to talk about something different every Thursday for 3 hours. So I show up, and the first thing he says to me is, well, what's your daiquiri spec? And I was like, on the spot, you know, and I was like, well, you know, 2 ounces rum. And, you know, I actually like to, like, instead of doing a 1 ounce of lime, I usually go a little less than that. And, you know, then, you know, a little more than 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup. And he goes, okay, cool. Like, you're not a complete idiot. All right. So,
so began your obsession with how people make daiquiris.
Oh yeah, for sure. And he still makes the best daiquiri I've ever had. And he invited me back, and allowed me to cut ice. And I'd never done that before. I mean, I was aware of it. I thought it was more of a, kind of a fad thing until Ben explained to me, like, there's a reason that we're going to hand cut all of our ice, and we're going to shake with large format ice that's perfectly clear. We want to control for temperature and dilution for all of our drinks, so we make them consistently every single time. And all this stuff was taught to Ben by Sasha Petrosky. And Sasha founded a bar called Milk and Honey on New Year's Eve, 1999, in New York. It was the first speakeasy in New York since Prohibition, and he did that really as more of a noise control measure than anything else. There was an apartment building next door. And so the landlord told him, like, okay, you can open a bar, but it's got to be quiet. And so he opened the speakeasy, and that's why there are now speakeasies literally in every city in the entire nation. It's because of Sasha. He's extremely influential to bartending and bar culture. And unfortunately, he passed away in 2015. But Ben worked with him for years in New York. And I didn't realize what I was getting into when I went to work for Ben, but he quickly humbled me. And sometimes you need that in life where, you get around people that have been doing it better and longer than not a lot longer.
It's like they say, if you're the smartest person in the room, it's time to find a new room.
Oh, exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself. And Ben always strives to get better every single day. And that was one of the biggest things I took from him was that, we're not going to rest on our laurels. Like we're going to try to figure out should we be adding salt, a couple dashes of salt to our daiquiris? Does that make it better for the guests? And, he instilled this, he reignited this fire that I had when I was back in Pensacola, when I was still new and fresh and green. And there was this whole world in front of me of discovering spirits and cocktails and hospitality. And he reignited that because I was pretty beat up about it, when the job didn't come through in D.C. And so I just took a step back and I just listened to whatever Ben said for the next couple of years. And it essentially not only reignited the fire, but made me much, much better at what I do. And on the side, I was lecturing about whiskey as kind of a side hustle to also help promote the bar because it was kind of new. And so I started a series called the Whiskey Explorer series. And, we just rotated geographically around the world, talked about different styles of whiskey, and then, cut some ice on the side. And, we would sell to some Michelin star restaurants. And, that was enough of a side hustle while I was also apprenticing under Ben to not just fill the hours, but I was really working hard.
Yeah, because you've been a whiskey nerd for a long time before you started delving deeper into cocktail science.
Absolutely. And because that was my wheelhouse, I wanted to, keep that knife sharp. I didn't want it to get too dull. And DC is a wild west when it comes to spirits. You can buy from anyone as long as you pay taxes on the bottle. You can put it on your shelf. Which allowed me to work with a lot of rare and vintage whiskey that, it was a lot harder to come by in Florida, which led me to working with Bill Thomas over at Jack Rose a little bit. And Bill's collection is, one of the best in the world when it comes to whiskey. And Bill eventually came over to my bar and did the series with me, which, was huge. Bill Thomas is one of the smartest people in the world when it comes to whiskey. The guy has forgotten more about whiskey than I'll ever know. And he is also extremely hospitable and one of the nicest humans you'll ever meet. And, for him to come and do the series with me was mind-blowing. So DC was a huge step forward for me as far as honing my craft.
Yeah.
And working alongside other people that were career hospitality professionals that had been doing it a long time for years, and then also people that were relatively the same age as me that were still new and learning, and I still feel new and learning right now.
Yeah.
I'm constantly humbled when I get around other hospitality professionals that, have so much more insight to things that I may not know. And, you can't know everything about any trade, you can.
Oh, never.
Exactly. But DC certainly helped leaps and bounds for sure. And then that led me here, and now I'm in Kentucky.
Yeah. I always thought, we won't go into details, but you had some personal stuff going on at the time that was separate from work.
Well, we can talk about it.
I mean, ancient history, it's in the past. But
Okay.
I mean, I think of that time, though, as you like in the basement of Old Reliable cutting ice is like similar to getting to the top of the mountain, finding the Kung Fu master, and then just training in silence for a long time. Because you were out lecturing in D.C., but you don't promote yourself much. You know, your Instagram is hilariously unupdated for all the high end work that you do, which I respect that a lot. I wish I had the fortitude to cut my
I
addiction.
try to have a healthy relationship with social media.
Yeah, well, I get it. You're better than me. But you know, you were just quietly doing good work, and then that led to here. So now you are. What's your official title these days? I don't even know.
Well, initially I was hired as a beverage director,
Right.
And then now that's sort of been morphed into the general manager role, just because somebody has to babysit people and
Right,
pay
but
all
you're
the
still
bills.
also overseeing the bar program, and
Yeah, of course.
Like yesterday, you were geeking out on wine from France. I forget the region, but like you're honing in on like just one region of France for wine, because now the way you've expressed to me, it's not that you're bored with whiskey, but you're ready to also apply the same energy to learning about wine. So you've been waiting on your SOM test for a year now?
Yeah, unfortunately, COVID sort of derailed that. It's a 2-day test, and I'm taking it down in Nashville. So it's kind of been postponed a little bit. But, I mean, wine is a whole world that you can get lost in, and I love that about it. I mean, one of my favorite stats is there are 900,000 registered vineyards in Italy alone. So, I mean, good luck even getting close. You know, I mean, even Robert Parker, like, I mean, he's tasted, 250,000 wines or whatever he says, and, like, that's still scratching the surface.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, that's an infinite void that you can get lost in. And, no, my passion for whiskey is always going to be there. I mean, I absolutely love bourbon. I love how intertwined it is with American history and the foundation of this country, and early settlers coming in from Scotland and Ireland, and distilling and little pot stills that they brought with them, and evading taxation and running through the hills away from the taxmen and gaugers. And I mean, I love that era of American history. I find it fascinating, and I love just the product itself. I mean, sipping whiskey is what me and you do all the time.
Oh yeah.
And certainly haven't lost my respect or my love of whiskey at all. It just in order to be well-rounded in the spirit world, I feel like you need to have a firm foundation in multiple spirits. And so, wine is something that I knew was probably not my strong suit. So I wanted to shore that up. So that's what I've been doing. And I joke a lot that, it took coming to bourbon country for me to get into wine. Like, how counterintuitive is that? But, no, I mean, it's certainly what I'm most passionate about right now. But really, I mean, it just goes back to hospitality. And if I can speak to my guests as intelligently about wine as I can whiskey or cocktails and cocktail history or whiskey history, if I can be a resource for them, for all spirits, that's really the goal.
Right.
I want to be the person that you can come to and be like, hey, I had this really cool vintage bottle of wine. Can you tell me about it? And I want to have those answers for them, because
it's literally your job. You're directing a guest experience.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I've just always appreciated, because like you said
I know. I know. Just
what the hell, man? That's staying in. I am not cutting that out.
All right. Okay.
But no, what I love about how you approach your work is that, and I think this is one reason we're friends, is like your hospitality genes never turn off. Like,
hey, same goes for you, brother.
Try, but I just mean like it's literally your job, but then off the clock, you don't stop. Like you are always just making people feel at home everywhere you go. Well, like whether that's with drinks or with food, or we're close friends, but you go above and beyond for me every time. And it's like, I try to do that back, of course, but it blows me away, because I see the near perfect two circles of the Venn diagram that just overlap with like who you are as you and who you are at work.
Yeah.
That purity is something I just love seeing every time I come up here.
Well, I mean, I found what I was born to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I really feel that way. And I mean, I grew up in a household where, being hospitable to guests was paramount. And, I got that from my mother, who, rivals my hospitality every single time.
Your mom is awesome.
Yeah, she is the most selfless person that I've ever met, hands down. She took 10 years out of her career just to raise me and make sure that, I didn't necessarily want for anything as a child, and be a single mom and still be able to support me doing that. And she was a professor for a while, and then worked with the PTA, and everything that she does is to help other people, and so that's where I got it from, without question. But Ben Long and I used to talk about this a lot in DC, because we both feel like we wound up in the hospitality industry because we didn't wind up in the military, where we wanted to be of service. We just are geared mentally to be of service to our fellow neighbor, to our countrymen, to our friends, our family. And we wound up in the service industry because it was our way of giving back to our communities and to our friends and family. Ben tried for a long time to get into the NSA and different avenues into service in that regard, but found his way into the hospitality industry. And that's also one of my favorite things about this industry, is that you meet so many interesting people that have either done another career and then that didn't really work out, or they've gone down a road in their life that just wasn't the right path for them, and then they find their way in the hospitality industry.
Yeah.
And it has saved so many of my friends, that were, had some wanderlust to them and were kind of lost and just wanting to travel around, and then they find their way by being, of service to their fellow person. And that's one of my favorite things about it. It's why I take so much pride in this industry, and why I know I'm going to do it the rest of my life. It's a very rewarding career, because you get to meet people just like you. And, we wouldn't have met if you weren't the photographer at Old Hickory.
We have to give a nod to Dan too for officiating the introduction.
Hey, what's up, Dan?
Because he came in, like, he and I, we had gotten to be buddies by that point, and then he said, "Hey, this is my buddy Andy," and you're just like coming with your bar tools, a game face on. You barely look up. You just kind of like do the perfunctory, "Hey, how's it going?" You keep moving, and then he went on to like just kick ass at the competition, and then we started talking because you were still at Jocko's then. Then you came to Old Hickory,
right? And
that's where things kicked off, and we had like 2 or 3 conversations where we both kind of looked sideways at each other and like, we get each other.
Yeah, all right. I think I could hang out with this guy. Yeah. No, Dan was my first regular, and he was my favorite regular because he only ordered Mick Ultra, so it made my job easy because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. People would ask me for a martini, and I was like, Is there lemon in that? I don't know.
This was the early days.
Oh, yeah. I got thrown back there before I knew what I was doing. And I was lucky to have Darren by my side, and Campbell, and Santana. And we had and Shelley, of course. And we had a really strong little team there. And they did a lot to, help me along in my really early days. I had no idea what the hell I was doing.
Yeah.
And, Dan would sit there at the end of the bar, and you just sit there and drink Mick Ultra, which made me immediate friends with him because I was like, I'm just going to go stand by Dan because I can make a mean Mick Ultra. So I can hang out with him and nail this job.
Yeah.
So he was always really nice about that. And then, we just became best friends, which is, again, like one of the benefits of this job is that you get to sit across from someone for a lot of time, and you get to know them really well. And, some of those people become the closest people in your life.
Yeah.
And I can't say enough good things about, Dan the man. He is he's
the best human.
He's the best of us.
And that's something that, to that broader point, it's like, that's something that I'm trying to lean into with the work that I do is if you look at my website right now, I had a discussion with a guy back home where he called me out on some bullshit that I was doing wrong, just as far as like communicating and being a friend, and I'm glad he did. And then hot on the heels of that, I listened to a podcast with Chris Burkhardt. I think he was on, was it Sam Jones? It's not a podcast I usually listen to, but it's an ultra runner who interviewed Chris Burkhardt, and Chris is into like long distance biking as well as being an amazing photographer and videographer. Cool dude. And it impressed on me like something I was vaguely aware of, but hearing them talk about it helped me really get specific about it in my own mind, and that was the element of storytelling that you find. Like you're saying, everyone in hospitality tends to have an interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
You see that in restaurants, and that's one reason I love shooting hotels so much, is that almost every hotel manager I've ever met is one of the most interesting people I've ever met.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're always like, hey, I used to be a roadie for this band. Hey, I used to be a mixed martial artist. Hey, I build guitars. Hey, I used to work on the Clinton campaign. Hey, I used to be a lighting director for live shows. Like, they all have something cool to tell you about. And those are all like actual examples that I've met, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I think the MMA guy and the guitarist were the same guy, like super interesting dude.
Wow.
Haven't seen Sky in a while. But the stories make the place because the people make the experience. And you see that in hotels, restaurants, bars, and I redid my whole website just to chase down clients that I could connect with to find the stories. Because like, I don't want to just go in, photograph a whole bunch of fruity cocktails on a beach and say, hey, come stay at XYZ place. I mean, you can do that. It's easy. For me, it's easy money because I don't have to think about it as much.
Mm-hmm.
But when you scratch a level deeper and you really pull out like, okay, the person that made this is going to give you like the coolest conversation of your life. You know, this manager here is going to bend over backwards and bring like years of pain from whatever they came out of and found their way into hospitality into making sure your life is as good as it can be while you're under their watch. And that's the cool thing to me about hospitality is the people make the place. It doesn't matter if it's a Hilton, a Holiday Inn, a bar, a restaurant, if it's Michelin starred or McDonald's. I've been to McDonald's before on road trips and had the most entertaining people in the world just hand me my receipt and hand me my food. Mm-hmm. Just experiences I had when I was 11 walking into a fast food restaurant have stayed with me for 20 years now because the people make the impact.
Oh, 100%.
And everyone knows this. Like deep down, everyone's aware of this, but no one ever thinks about it because it's like white noise. It's just the thing is the thing, and you don't think about it. Mm-hmm. But when you do stop to think about it, it leaves an impression on me every time. Mm-hmm. Because getting closer to you and other people within the bar industry, you know, as many places I've photographed, it's funny. I've never actually worked in a restaurant or bar. You know, we've laughed before. I describe myself as bar adjacent because most of my friends are bartenders. I'm behind the bar with them half the time doing my trick, but I've never actually been in the trenches on a Friday night doing it. Mm-hmm. So I never assumed to know what that experience is, but I feel privileged to be close to it and see how these people work because it's always cool. Yeah.
And I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I always use an ice cream sundae as an analogy when I'm trying to explain this to most people. And that the cocktail is just the cherry on top of the sundae, but you can have a great sundae without the cherry. Mm-hmm. And it's all like the hospitality portion is the ice cream sundae.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you can cultivate a wonderful experience for someone just by being yourself, by having a team that you're relaxed with, that creates an atmosphere of welcoming and family and fun. And that can be done without the cocktail. And because I'm so obsessive about like, you know, the way that I want to make cocktails and some of my philosophies behind that, it also often gets misrepresented. I really only care about my guests having a good time. Mm-hmm. And it does help if you have a really good cocktail in your hand, but it's not a necessity. Yeah. You know, when I go to different bars and restaurants, people typically like look at me for like, you know, is this a good cocktail? Is it not a good cocktail? And I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, are we having a good time?
Yeah.
Are we? We are. Fantastic. I mean, we went to Bar Expo the other night in Louisville. We had a fantastic time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, and, you know, it's nothing special as far as like the decor. You know, they designed it to be sort of like a dive bar, but the bartenders were hospitable. We had an amazing time there. And, you know, that's really all you need is just, you know, someone behind the bar that is being hospitable, thinking about, you know, what you might want or need. Sometimes people really want to talk to you. And so that's what they need. They need someone to sit there and listen and not ask too many questions and just be a sounding board. And sometimes what guests need are the exact opposite. They just want to sit there, be left alone, read a book, be quiet. Mm-hmm. And, you know, as hospitality professionals, we cultivate whatever atmosphere that guest needs.
Yeah.
And you pick that up after doing it for a little while, where you can kind of read someone like, okay, this person, wants to be the life of the party. They came in with all their frat brothers, and, they want to be, the big dick swinging dude in the room or whatever. So, you're going to, make sure like he gets his drink first, and, I'm the man kind of guy. And then some people just want to sit there in peace and quiet and, be alone with their thoughts. And that's totally fine too. And it's our job to cultivate that atmosphere simultaneously for multiple different groups of people or individuals, all in the same space. And when you have a team working alongside you that understands all of that, it makes it easy because, you can do that simultaneously for all of those people. And when it's like when you talked about flow earlier, and, when you're giving guests the experience that they came in for, and that's happening in a dozen different places in one space.
Right.
While also, making cocktails, cleaning, making sure everything is mise en place, and you're doing all this alongside, your coworkers and other bartenders. It's a thing of beauty, man. I mean, one of my favorite things is going to a bar and that's a well-oiled machine and watching them work and just in their flow state where, they're doing it effortlessly.
Oh, yeah.
And it is a thing of beauty. It's like watching an orchestra. I mean, it's a really, really cool thing to watch.
One of my favorite things pre-COVID, years ago when you were back in the hometown, is when I would come in, and I didn't go to bars on weekends if I could help it just because crowds put me on edge. But the times that I did, like a Friday night, 10:30, 11, my favorite thing to do was just to order something very straightforward that I could get quickly, and then just watch you and AJ and Shayna and Shelly and Noel in that like kind of golden age back then, all y'all working behind the bar because, and we've talked about this before as well, is that y'all had so much fun working with each other. Like you and AJ would be mixing drinks, and while mixing a good drink, you'd be like having a rap off to Eminem, and Noel's in the corner like talking to someone about whiskey very intently. It's like everyone's just like in the moment.
Yeah.
Everyone's very present, but at the same time having the time in their lives. And I think that's, and we tweezed this out in a discussion on the phone one time. I think that's something interesting that people tap into in hospitality, but that we kind of accidentally saw people tap into with really good conversational podcasts. Like when Joe Rogan does his Sober October challenge every year with, Segura, Kreischer, and Shafir. We love listening to those podcasts for the same reason we like seeing a team having fun behind a bar, is that you are in proximity to people who genuinely care about each other, love what they do, love each other, and have a good time regardless.
Absolutely.
And when you can get closer to that, like people get obsessed with certain podcasts because it's bringing that element they wish they had into their life. And some people get almost obsessive about their favorite bar because that's where they can just drop in and have that immediately. Or even if they don't engage with it, they can at least be close to it. And even being close to it is sometimes enough.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see. And like that's what you and Jeff have back here now. I mean, the fact that you guys have so much history together, and now you're making some of the best drinks in the world at one of the best distilleries in the world is so cool.
It's surreal.
Yeah.
But it feels effortless because, working with Jeff just comes naturally, and, we just dance behind the bar with one another, and I do my best not to screw up and embarrass him. But I mean, he's a consummate professional. Jeff's been doing this a long time, and we work very well behind the bar with one another. We have a great banter dynamic, and fingers crossed we can have bar guests again, because that's really where we both shine. Right now we have 4 bar seats at the bar, and it technically they're at a table. It's not even, still doesn't feel like we're back to normal yet. And I just cannot say how fortunate we both are to be here during the last year. The Colesveen family has been so generous by keeping our entire staff on, allowing us to continue to hone our craft and still work here, and not have to, find another trade, which happened to so many people during the last year. So many of my friends in other markets are not faring nearly as well. And it breaks my heart because some of my favorite bars in the world, some of my favorite restaurants in the world, some of my favorite humans that work in those places are applying for stock boy jobs, just to try to make ends meet. It's been a really, really rough time for the hospitality industry. And I just feel so lucky to be where I am right now. I mean, it truly is like being on like a little oasis, mean, we feel like, being out in the middle of the countryside where, there's a lot of open spaces and not nearly as much, indoor entertainment and stuff like that. We've gotten by pretty much unscathed in this area. Nelson County's been fine pretty much the entire epidemic, and to, like I said, retain my entire staff so that when we were able to reopen, we could hit the ground running and not have to go through, all the, training period and, growing pains that you go through anytime you're opening a bar or restaurant. To be able to, kind of walk back in and get right back to work and, not really lose a step was huge. And that's due entirely to the generosity of the Colesvines, man. I mean, I can't say enough good things about that family. Like, I knew them professionally before I came here, and that's what led me here, was because there was already an established relationship. So I wasn't an unknown walking through the door.
Because you've been up here for like Bourbon Affair and all those events and stuff, just like as an attendee before, right?
Oh, absolutely. But I was still very much adjacent. I was just a name that they were aware of.
Yeah.
And, I'd had a relationship with Jessica Osborne for a long time just because she's our global brand ambassador. And, she would pop into Old Hickory from time to time and has a good relationship with Katie Garrett. And so, I wasn't a complete unknown coming here. But as I've gotten to know Drew and Britt and Janelle and Evan, I've just been blown away by their hospitality. I thought I was good at it, but I mean, Drew invites people over to his house to have a cigar after meeting him for 10 minutes, and, these are people that are coming in from all over the world that he may never even see again, but that's just his nature. Like, he is the most hospitable person I think I might have ever met. I mean, and I see it all the time, He is in the restaurant every day. He wants to talk to every guest that comes to Willett. I mean, the guy, I don't know how he does it. He's a machine. Like, I mean, he's wonderful. Just a wonderful person.
Yeah. I spoke to him when I first came in. He and I don't talk a whole lot because you hire me for everything that I do here, and I know he's busy, so I don't bug him. But every time I see him, this is going to sound like a complete kiss-ass statement, but I do mean it. He reminds me a little bit.
Did I do enough kissing ass to my boss right there? Was that good?
It was almost enough. I mean, a little bit louder for the people in the back next time. But
I wouldn't say that it wasn't true, man. That guy he's incredible.
Yeah, well, and when I see him just interact with people, he reminds me a little bit of Elon Musk, just with the quiet observation, the rapid eye movement. I can just tell his brain's firing, just like universes are coming to life in there all the time. And just know he's a man with a plan. It's cool to watch.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's far more intelligent than he lets on. And, I'm sure he has to dumb down his brain a little bit when he talks to me. But I mean, he's an impressive human being. One of the smartest guys I've ever met. And to be that smart, that good at what you do, and as influential as he is in the whiskey world, and to still be a humble person, to be as generous as he is to the people in his life, just speaks to his character.
And I think
incredible.
And that's something that for people who do come to visit the distillery, I mean, that's something that seems to trickle down to every part of the operation. Like, obviously, I'm not in the distillery making the whiskey. I'm not on the bottling line. I don't see everything all the time. But the stuff I do see is for the luxury product that's created here and for the volume that comes out of a campus this compact, everyone makes it look kind of easy. Like, just with that leadership you're talking about from the top, everyone just seems to be just steadily working all the time. I never see people running around crazy. I never see people panicking. It seems, not to say things don't happen, but by and large, I drop in here, every few months or so, and it's always very relaxed. Everyone just seems to enjoy their work, enjoy the people they're working with, and then you've got good leadership from the top just modeling that. That's really cool to watch, because there's a difference between leaders and people who want to lead, and to see like good leadership is rare. and it's cool.
Yeah.
And it's a treat to see when you do see it.
No, 100%, man. Drew leads by example. And, it makes everyone relaxed around here because the person that leads this entire operation, from Britt to Drew, they know what they're doing. They are fully in control. They're knowledgeable. Like, it allows everyone else to feel like, okay, like we are in good hands. Mm-hmm. And, it allows us to put out a great product all consistently all the time. And it's due to their due diligence, their attention to detail, making sure that everything is finely tuned, that everything from the bottling line to the distillery to our hospitality sector with Janelle, who runs that, are all just well-oiled machines. And that allows all of the staff to relax and just give guests good experience, make good whiskey, and make sure it gets shipped out and put in the right hands so that people can have a good time drinking it.
Yeah.
The operation here is, like I said, it's a well-oiled machine. Mm-hmm. This place is impressive.
Yeah, it's a well-oiled machine that turns corn into conversations, and it's pretty amazing. All right, man. Yeah. So we probably ought to wind this up. I know you got work to do, and I got to get on the road in a minute.
Okay.
Couple of things to sign off. Are you reading or writing your own story right now?
That's a great question. At the moment, I'm reading.
Okay.
The writing portion will happen. I'm just not quite there yet.
Gotcha.
I think my story in Kentucky has a few more chapters that I need to read, and then we'll get to writing. But it'll get there.
Cool. And because of what you do, 3 things. Current favorite cocktail, just for an easy afternoon.
Man, easy afternoon. I go back and forth on this all the time. Steve?
Yeah,
okay?
So just flavor the moment. I'm not looking for a permanent answer here.
Okay. Right now, my favorite cocktail, if I'm just outside, springtime, probably be a caipirinha.
Nice.
I made one for you the other day. And
roughly 12 hours ago, because it's been that many hours since I missed it.
It's just simple drinks make for the best drinks. 3 ingredients, man. It's super simple. There's nothing complicated about it, but it's delicious. And I go back and forth on cocktails all the time. Obviously, like we talked about earlier, really into wine right now, but a nice caipirinha right now. God, that sounds delicious.
Yeah. Especially like as beautiful as it is outside, just matches blue sky and green grass really well. So again, totally flavor of the month, but what wine are you into right now?
I
can't have you on and not ask these questions. Sorry.
No, please. So right now, Albarino, from the Regis Baixas region of Spain. And we can talk about different, producers that make Albarino. But I really like the Albarino grape right now. It's probably my favorite. But Sauvignon Blanc right now also I'm super into, especially, some of the Sauvignon Blancs coming out of Loire that have that firecracker, sort of gunpowder, note to them because of the silica in the soil. That is so interesting. And, it's fascinating, drinking the terroir of different small regions, which I know for people really into wine, this is going to sound like a retard talking about it, but I really enjoy those Sauvignon Blancs a lot with the firecracker stuff. So I'm really into that. Albarino too. But there's so much good wine out there, man. There's so much.
And that's all I say. Flavor of the month, just whatever's tickling your fancy. Okay, and a whiskey recommendation because of where we are, and there's no getting around it.
Well, Willett,
duh. That's a given.
Yeah. Okay. So, what kind of answer are you looking for here? What am I drinking? What?
Yeah. What are you like? I'll give a Willett recommendation because you're a company man. But also, what else are you drinking right now? Because I know when I came into your house the other night, we demolished most of a bottle of Rowan's Creek.
It was Noah's Mill.
Sorry.
There you go.
That's how much I drank that night.
So Noah's Mill is 114.3 proof. It's the highest proof offering that we have. That's not one of our single barrels.
Okay.
I think it's a really well-rounded whiskey. A lot of depth of flavor, great textural mouthfeel.
Forgive me for forgetting the label, because I didn't touch the bottle all night because you and your girlfriend kept pouring it for me. So I had a vague recollection of a Willett product.
That's fair. I love Noah's Mill. I think one of the most overlooked brands that we produce is Pure Kentucky. It's 107 proof. It's absolutely delicious. We typically say that's like a cigar smoker's whiskey because it pairs well with cigars. I think anything can pair well with a cigar as long as you're enjoying it personally. But I think Pure Kentucky is the most overlooked product that we do. Everything we do here is high quality, but Pure Kentucky I think the label just doesn't get as much attention on the back bar or on the shelf in liquor stores.
Yeah.
Because it's a nondescript looking bottle. But the juice inside is good. I mean, it is some solid stuff.
I bought a bottle of that this round. It's in my trunk now, so I'll be trying that when I get home.
Good.
And your 4-year rye is still one of my favorite things on this planet.
Oh man, the rye.
It's like a dessert.
It's delicious. It's so good. And I mean, we make good whiskey, man. I mean, but I can't take any credit for that. I just drink it.
Oh, I know.
I drink it and I talk about it, but
you talk about it really well.
I love it.
Any other whiskeys tickling your fancy right now? Like apart from the Willett offerings, which are always consistently amazing. Like, is there anything else that you've been impressed with lately? It's kind of like a nice surprise or anything? Yeah,
the stuff coming out of Limestone Branch is really good. I've been really impressed with them.
Okay.
Lately, Wilderness Trail as well. Peerless. I was a little skeptical about the new make. I thought that was doing instead of using a sour mash process, use a sweet mash process at Peerless, and so I thought it was going to be more of like a marketing thing, but their team over there, they're good, man. Peerless, I mean, it's a little pricey because you're not using any setback in your distillation process, but the whiskey coming out of there is really good. Peerless is doing it right, without question. Limestone Branch for sure. Really high on them as well. But there's so much good whiskey being produced now because we've sort of dialed in distillation that, even the stuff like MGP gets such a bad rap because, they have 95% of the aged rye market out there is all MGP juice, but everyone buys from them because it's good. For the
uninitiated, MGP being?
It's the old Seagram's Distillery in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. It's the largest distillery in the United States. It's massive. It is huge. And they mostly contract distill. They have their own labels now. But, if you're a small distillery and you want to get up and running and you want to get something with some age on it onto the market under your label, you'll usually contract distill with MGP. And, they're great at what they do. High West worked with them for a long time.
Okay.
And, a lot of the juice that they were using for a long time was coming out of MGP. And, their labels are... if you look at the rye market and it looks like a lot of different rye, it's really all coming out of MGP, a lot of it. And that's not a bad thing. A lot of whiskey, people in the whiskey world will kind of turn their nose up a little bit at that because they're like, oh, it's all MGP. But man, everyone's buying from them because it's good. Yeah. They make great juice. Some of the stuff coming out of High West, I fell in love with years ago.
I've been really keen on High West lately. That's usually what I keep around for just casual sipping here and there. I've really been enjoying that lately.
Yeah, it's great stuff, and fortunately, due to just technology progressing, distillation has been cleaned up a little bit, and the practices are pretty standardized now. So most distilleries are doing all the right stuff. So there's a lot of really good whiskey hitting the market right now, and I don't see that stopping anytime soon. This is not a fad. Whiskey drinkers are always going to be whiskey drinkers, and there's a lot of us. So I think, there's going to be a very long road ahead for the whiskey that's being produced in America, which is great because, man, for so much of our history in the whiskey world in this country, it's seen its ups and downs. From vertical integration, in the late 1900s to Prohibition, which consolidated the industry even more, and then you have Schlenley, which produced an obscene amount of whiskey in the 50s in preparation for thinking that the Korean War was going to shut down the whiskey production again, and then that didn't happen, which led to a whiskey glut. It's just seen so many ups and downs in this industry, and I the needle is just pointed straight up right now, and it's a rocket ship. Whiskey's booming, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. So
I'm a fan.
I'm happy to be in Kentucky. I'll say that much, man.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy you're here because that gets me one step closer to the source. And That's always fun for me.
Well, it's great having you, man. And I absolutely love seeing you. And the fact that you're willing to drive, the 8-9 hours, although I think it was like 12 hours this go around.
Yeah, no one in Alabama could keep it together. There was like 5 wrecks bottlenecking traffic that day.
Yeah, I felt so bad. But, I mean, the fact that you're willing to come up here and hang out in Bourbon Country with me for a few days it's everything, man. I love you to death.
It's the best part of my month. I love you too, man. Thanks so much for doing this. I'm sorry it took so long.
No. Absolutely. We'll do it again. We'll do a little part 2 of some whiskey next time when it's not, in the AM. Or we might do it again in the AM, just the other end of it.
Yeah. We'll need to have one that's a little bit more free-flowing because there's so much we have in common that is so off the wall. It would be so much fun to just get hammered and talk about.
Oh, yeah. No, we'll do that. But next time, I'll come down to Pensacola and we'll do it down there. And, we'll do a part 2.
I dig it.
All right, cool.
All right.
All right, thanks for having me on, man.
Be humble. Be grateful. 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 Be humble. Be grateful.